Hey, Guru Nation, welcome back to another episode of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru. And this is also going to be featured on YouTube. Uh, this is a bonus podcast episode for those of you watching on YouTube. But I've been doing a lot of podcast exclusive content, so iTunes, Google Play, whatever it may be, go there. This is episode 68 now. And the last episode, episode 67, which I did earlier today, was sort of a summary of my week last week, or this week. It's Friday today, so the week that is wrapping up. And it was primarily focused on Monday through Thursday, and today, Friday, is more of a catch up day. We're starting a new CRA Academy tomorrow, so the August session is starting week one tomorrow, and our next class will be in early November, and so looking forward to that. But in the last podcast, episode 67, or in the last video for you guys on YouTube, you guys and gals, I promised that we're going to be covering and going in depth on the do's and don'ts of operating your first research clinic. So, I guess one of the unexpected side effects and consequences of putting myself out there so much is, I've never started the videos or the podcast to get feedback from you guys. I always knew that I would potentially get opportunities from the viewers, and I have, and I'm incredibly grateful for those. But I underestimated just how many conversations I would be having on a daily basis with people watching, people listening, people following on all the social networks that want to start their own sites. So some are completely research naive, like have zero experience in this industry, and others are 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years of experience in the clinical research industry from the CRO side. So many are senior CRAs, project managers, maybe study coordinators. They want to start their own research clinics. And I've picked up on a couple of common themes which I think are worthy of further exploration, and they merit some discussion. So, this is why I like having these podcasts, because I can really go long form. I know YouTube's really ideal is 7 to 10 minutes for a video, but to go in depth, I mean, this topic would require 20, 30 minutes minimum. And I think that's what we're going to strive for today. But I've been getting common themes from these people that I'm interacting with now on a daily basis, sometimes even in person. We had someone come in yesterday who wants to start a site, and he's a physician who is unlicensed, and his wife is a licensed physician, and they're research naive, but they want to get into clinical research. They want to start a site, and I think it's good. I think this is one of the most stable businesses you can create, um, and you can go from 0 to 6 figures in your first year easily with just one site. The problem is there's a steep learning curve to some of these things, especially when you're research naive. I mean, that's a huge learning curve. And when you're coming at it from the perspective of being a long time CRA, there is a paradigm shift that is required. So you're no longer, as a CRA, you're almost like a robot. Okay? You go into the site, you follow your report, you follow a model every single visit. Yes, there's always changes, there's always something new at every visit. No two sites are the same, but the process is similar. You follow rules. You're not rewarded for thinking outside the box or going against conventional wisdom. Whereas In clinical, when you own a research site or any startup or any business, half of it is art. When you're a CRA, it's like all science. When you're a business owner, it's half science, half art. And what I mean by art is you need to be quick on your feet. You need to be able to improvise. You need to be flexible. You need to be resilient. You need to be willing to come up with creative solutions to problems. I'm not saying you don't need that as a CRA, but you're not really rewarded for being creative. You're rewarded for following the protocol and documenting that your sites are following the protocol or not following the protocol. There's very little room for creativity. When you own a research site, you've got to be creative. So, here's an example. One of the things you need if you don't have a PI, you don't have a site. So when you go out and get PIs, there's no rules that says, "Hey, this is the way to go get a PI. Don't use this method, use this one." Like, you need to find out what works for you, because starting a podcast, starting a blog, picking up the phone and cold calling physicians, it may not work for you. What may work for you is using your network, your sphere of influence, to put the word out there that you are starting a site and then have them come to you. A lot of CRAs have solid networks, contacts, and they may not want to go door to door. They may not want to cold call. They may not want to pitch email email pitch to strangers who are physicians that they want to attract to their site. I mean, you can do that. You don't have to. You may not want to. You may want to leverage your network, your sphere of influence. So, but if that doesn't work, then you've got to be willing to do something else. And I think that's the biggest difference between working for someone else and working for yourself is there's no blueprint. You establish, you create the blueprint, you create the rules. Yes, we all have to follow certain guidelines. We have to be within a certain framework, but within that framework, you can alternate strategies, experiment with different methods. Same thing when it comes to getting studies. There's no rule for how you can get studies. Oh, do you want to use clinicaltrials.gov? Do you want to just go to conferences and network? Do you want to contact your medical liaisons in your area or your pharma sales reps in your area? Do you want to, again, leverage your sphere of influence, your contacts that you've established over the years? You can do it all. And you should do it all until you figure out what works for you. I talk about things that have worked for me. I know, for example, if you want to find a physician, the best way is to ask your current PI for colleagues and then go talk to them. If you don't know any current physicians, you need to go door knock at different medical offices, literally every day or whenever you have time until you find one, and then leverage their contacts. That's what's worked for me. As far as getting studies, I know what's worked for me. We use clinicaltrials.gov. We go on there. Every week we send out 100 emails for indications that we're interested in. Every week we can expect 1 to 3 CDAs, or confidentiality disclosure agreements, from which 1 or 2 of those will turn into a feasibility survey. So if you just keep doing that, you're gonna get studies. But again, you may not want to do that. You may not need to do that. But you may need to try it if the other things are not working for you. So that's the biggest difference between working for someone else, working for yourself. So that's one of the common themes is everyone's looking for the roadmap, the blueprint for how to do it, and there is none. There's 3 things you need. You need a physician, you need studies, and you need patients to put in those studies. That's it. Okay? You don't need any licenses to do this. All you need after that is a CLIA waiver or a CLIA certificate. Your PI and your study coordinator will need a good clinical practice certificate and training, and you can renew this every year. And by the way, these are free. Uh, that's it, okay? And then you obviously need a physical location where you're going to do the studies. Now, the question becomes, should I open my own site and personally guarantee a lease for 3 years, because no landlord in their right mind is gonna just let you rent their space on a month-to-month contract or on a long-term contract if your business has no history, without you personally guaranteeing the lease, right? They want guaranteed income. They want a guaranteed rent payment for that time period. So, do you want to do that? Are you willing to risk that, or would you rather find a physician who you can work out of their office and maybe in exchange pay them a little more, pay them more percentage of the budget than you would otherwise if they were to do it from your office, which leads us to another topic. How do you pay your physicians? Again, there are no rules. You pay them whatever you guys or gals agree is fair. So, if you find a physician and you're going to use their office, and you're going to, first of all, how you partner with them is also completely up to you, and this is where the creativity just comes in. So, how are you going to partner with them? Be a solutions person, okay? Figure out what they want. Do they want to partner with you? Do you want to partner with them? Partnership is like a marriage, okay? It's easy to get into, hard to get out of. I prefer, unless I really know them well or trust my intuition on it and I have a good feeling about them, I will start an LLC with them. But I would first have them as an independent contractor for my company. So I'm using their office. I'm going to pay them more. They're my independent contractor. Okay, if I don't like this person, I can just leave. We can just clean, separate, right? There's no messy dissolution papers we've got to file like you would when you're partnered with someone in an LLC, right? So independent contractor has some advantages, but it also has disadvantages, all right? Maybe the PI is not going to be as incentivized to make the research clinic successful because he or she doesn't have equity in the business. Or maybe they will. Who knows? You've got to find out. These are things for you to discover. Now, here's what I told a client who came in here yesterday, or a potential client who came in here yesterday. Why not try both? Okay? If money is no obstacle, which it is for 99% of people, myself included, right? Money is always an issue. Partner out of a physician's office first, pay them as an independent contractor. Once you learn how to run a research site, you can then go start your own, another one, and this time you can bring on another PI. Just make sure you're not competing with yourself. So put it 10 miles away, 20 miles away, 30 miles away, however far you got to go, depending on the population density in your area. In Los Angeles, you can go like 5 miles away and you're not competing. Just because it's so densely populated here. But if you're somewhere in the Midwest, you may have to go into the next town, whatever the case may be. But try both. See what works best for you. And by the way, what works best for me may not be what works best for you. You've got to figure that out on your own. So, but why not experiment? Okay? Always limit your downside. This is why I recommend you partner with a physician and use their office space. Okay. First thing, my biggest concern, if I'm a new site owner and I have to personally guarantee a 3-year lease on my own clinic, what if I go out of business in 6 months? Or what if I don't even like doing research? What am I going to do now? I have office space I got to pay for the next 2.5 years, which could be $60,000. So, or more. in some markets. So that's my downside. I don't want that. That's a huge downside. Now, there is no limit to your upside, but you do want to limit your downside. Okay, that's what you can control. Your upside's great. You want whatever you can get, but you got to start off small. So try both. Start with a physician. A year later, see how that goes. A year later, experiment with another clinic, with another PI. Start your own. Try a different model. See what works. Or, by the way, if that model worked well, repeat it somewhere else. And now you have two sites. And this is how you grow. Which leads me to my next topic, which is how quickly should you expand? And this is another theme. Most people who talk to me, call me, come see me, whatever, I was like this too when I started out. I'm ambitious. I wanted to expand quickly. I didn't have patience, right? So people come to me all the time and say, "Hey, I want to start a CRO." And I say, "Good. Well, what are you currently doing now?" They say, "Well, I'm in banking, but I hear the CRO market is great. I want to get in." And so I asked them, "Let me get this straight. You have no idea what clinical research entails and you want to start a CRO? Good luck with that. What I always recommend is start with one research site. It's the simplest thing to do. Again, all you need is one PI, one study, and enroll patients in that study. And you, the site owner, needs to be the study coordinator because you need to learn this stuff. Okay, if you need a crash course on this, I have free videos. If you want a more intense crash course on this and a more focused and specifically catered to your needs crash course, we have the CRA Academy. There's options there, okay? You've got to explore, you've got to educate yourself. Don't Rome was not built in one day. Don't try to do everything right away. Build slowly, brick by brick, build your infrastructure. Start with one PI, one study, you as the coordinator, get patients in there, learn what a source document is, okay? Learn what regulatory documents are. Learn how to submit your initial regulatory documents. Learn how to maintain a regulatory binder. Learn how to do an IRB annual review report. Learn how a protocol amendment can affect your budget, which can then affect the rate you're enrolling patients in. Learn some of the challenges of recruitment. Learn. There's so much. Why are you going to expand when you don't know the basics? So you need to set up a strong foundation. And by the way, while you're building this foundation, if you're the coordinator and you're watching your overhead, you're partnering with a PI and you're using their office and you're only paying them as you get paid, you can make six figures in your first year. Okay? With one, all you need is one study. An average budget is 100K. You enroll 10 patients in that study in 1 year, you're going to gross $100,000. Now, you're probably going to pay your PI 30% because you're using their office. So that's 70K. You probably have petty cash and other payments. So let's say another 15K. So you're making 65K, right? But still, that's not bad. And you're figuring out how to do this. Now you can get another study, a second and a third, and you can still manage 3 studies on your own, especially if you learn quickly and you're able to adapt the principles that you've learned to the other studies. Because regardless of indication, most studies are the same. Now, the variables are the different assessments and the different ways to track certain diseases and some of the side effects and some of the adverse events. But the study, GCP, informed consent, regulatory, source documentation, ALCOA, those are all constant. Those are all the same. So you're building your foundation. Once you're comfortable with managing a couple studies, I think realistically you personally can manage 3 to 5 trials, which essentially would be 1 or 2 patient visits a day, maybe a little more if the studies are not as involved, like a psychiatric trial. Those psych study visits can last 5 hours. So obviously you can't do 2 of those in one day. unless you have multiple staff, like we do at San Bernardino. This week on Tuesday, we had 5 visits. But we have a lot of staff there, and we can handle that. You personally can handle 1 visit a day. You can spread that out over 3 to 5 studies, and now you can gross 300K a year, which after you pay your PI and everything is 150, 200K, maybe a little more, depending on where your money's going. Okay? Now, once you do this for a year minimum 1 year, I don't want you thinking about expanding or opening up an additional site or, God forbid, starting a CRO. All right, minimum 1 year, learn the process with 1 site and 1 PI. Now, if you have a fallout with that PI or that PI doesn't want to do it, obviously you have to start over, right? But if things are going well or normal, they don't even have to go well, just normal. 1 year minimum. Then I would really wait 3 years minimum and really build up the profits. Maybe hire a coordinator, train them, because one of the benefits of you getting in on the ground level and doing all this work initially yourself is you can build up your SOPs and your training for your future employees. So, one of the first things I did when I started with South Coast Clinical Trials back in 2005, um, I knew that because I was already thinking entrepreneurial minded, I knew that in a year or two, I need to remove myself from the business and work on the business and not in the business. Like, yes, that should be your goal, but there is no fast forward button. Okay, you can't just go from nothing to working on your business and not working in your business. It doesn't work that way, okay? But you should be thinking that in the back of your mind while you're in the trenches, seeing the patients, entering the data. In the back of your mind, you should be thinking, okay, when I hire someone, this is what I'm going to have them do. I'm going to write down the process, the SOP, the training. Bam. So after a year, I think you're ready to hire, especially if you're getting more studies. Even if you're not, let's say you have 3 to 5 studies and you still want to expand, you need to now hire a study coordinator. Now that's a pretty big investment because you're going to be paying them anywhere from 40 to 80,000 a year depending on their experience level, where you're located, what kind of studies you do, etc. So that's a big investment. That's a big chunk of your revenues. So hire your coordinator, train them well, and then you can get more studies at your site. So instead of doing 3 to 5 studies, you can now double that and do 6 to 10 studies. Okay, once you reach that point, you have another decision. Do I want to bring in another coordinator here and continue to expand this site and grow this site into a big site? Or do I want to open another site? And this is where the creativity comes in. There is no blueprint for this, okay? There's no rules that says after X amount of years, this is what you should do. It all depends on the variables. How is your interactions with your PI? Does your PI like research? Do you think your PI is secretly plotting to start his own clinic and just wants to cut you out of the picture? Like, these are things you need to think about. So, obviously, if I'm thinking that my PI is plotting against me and wanting to start their own site and cut me out of the picture, I don't want to invest any more into that site. I'd rather go partner with another PI and open another site and let this one sort of run its course, right? No PI is going to leave if the money's doing okay. If they're getting a decent return on their time, they're not going to leave right away, right? But you can let the business run its own course if you feel that like that's what's happening, and start another site. Or maybe things are going great. Then in that case, I would continue investing in that site. Um, this brings up a little side note. Never, ever, I don't care how good things are going with your PI. I don't care if they're your family member. Never depend on one PI. Always look for more. So while I know it sounds a little contradictory where I say focus on one site, on focus, the acronym is focus on one course until successful. Yes, but there's always a but, and this is the biggest difference between being an entrepreneur and being an employee. There's always and. So focus on that and have a contingency plan. So always network. Networking doesn't stop. Find another doctor just in case things don't work out. Bring them on as a sub-by. Groom them. Build up their CV. Let them know what's going on or not. Again, up to you. You know the dynamics, the interpersonal dynamics better than I do. And then you have a contingency plan. So now you have the option. Do I want to invest it all here? Do I want to open this site? Do I want to keep them both? Do I want to close this one? Do I want to open another one? Etc., etc. Okay. Now, once you have 2 or 3 sites, or just one big one, you have choices. Do I continue growing this site into a huge uh, industry leading site? Or do I want a bunch of small research clinics? That was my business model, the small research clinics. I actually think it's easier than having one huge site because I think one huge site has a lot of limits. There's physical limitations, there's just you run out of space. PIs, sometimes they don't get along well. The sponsors may not want to give you all the studies at your site. So having, in my opinion, having a bunch of small sites is better. Of course, on the con of that, on one of the negative consequences of that is it's harder to manage because you're all over the place. So you've got to really focus on one site at a time as they grow, or just have really good training systems in place for your staff. But I know many people, many, probably more. I probably know more people that have been successful by having one huge site than a bunch of small ones. I think I'm like one of the exceptions there. I think the norm is having one big site, building it out, and just continuing to build on top of that. I know one site in particular started that way maybe 20 years ago. Started at one site. Then they opened 2 sites just close to each other. Now they're a CRO and a site, and they get the projects from the sponsors, and they're able to do the study at their sites, and the CRO manages the study at their sites. So there's a lot of things you can do. If you go the very small site route, you can start an SMO. And I know many people that started SMOs, and yes, sponsors don't like SMOs, but there's nothing wrong with the business model. The issue with SMOs was quality. There was a lack of quality from the majority of SMOs because they didn't really care about that. They valued growth over quality. And now we're back to the old days where sponsors really only want to deal with PIs that are going to be recruiting from their own patient database. Gone are the days of we're going to provide you a huge advertising budget and we're going to hope that you can get patients. No, nowadays it's more specialized. It's more like a Navy SEALs approach. They want a very tactical, I want this PI, I don't care if he's a key opinion leader or not. He's got a bunch of patients. We're going to use him for this study. That's the model that my CRO is built on. We actually go one step further. We'll go find physicians with large patient databases that have never done research, and we train them on how to do research, and then we can use them as a site. So you can be as creative as you want, okay? Huge site, small site, bunch of small sites, bunch of huge sites, CRO, SMO, whatever the case may be, it starts with one site, one PI, one study, okay? You can go ahead and expand if you want. Chances are the odds are against you. The deck is stacked against you, and that's not the way to do it, especially when you've never done research before. But even if you have, and even if money is no issue, it's still best because at the end of the day, you have to hire people. And if there's no company culture because you're just expanding so quickly that you're never there to establish a culture, the site's going to create a culture on its own. And oftentimes it's not going to be what you want. Oftentimes it's not going to be good. It's going to be in the best interest of whoever is there, not you. So there's a lot of issues there. Start slowly. Start with one PI. Start with one study. And go from there. Right? So thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. And make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, and reach out to me anytime. Thank you very much. Bye bye.